Have you ever seen a picture of Reimu with brown hair, only to later see her with black hair? Or maybe you've seen Youmu with red eyes, and later she had blue ones. Or maybe even, art of Oku where her eye brooch thing is missing. Instead of chalking this up to cases of hair dye, colored contacts, or a simple change of outfit, I'm going to refer to these as character inconsistencies. So here's your explanation for the video title. Today I wanted to look at various aspects from character designs that fans, and even official content, can never seem to agree on, or agree way too well on. Though I'm not planning on going over every single ribbon change, just the ones I think are the most interesting. So without further ado, let's begin with our oh so familiar protagonists. Now normally I skip over PC98 because there's usually not much to talk about, but I wanted to pit stop on the protags, mainly the blonde one. In Story of Eastern Wonderland, Marissa appears as the Stage 4 boss as a redhead with red eyes, though from the next game onwards, she's blonde with yellow eyes. The easy answer would be color limitations, but that doesn't seem likely given yellow is used on the UI. I actually couldn't find anything concrete on it. Funnily enough, Marissa's title in Phantasmagoria Dim Dream and Lotus Land Story is A Being Made of Magic and Red Dreams. Where the red is coming from in that title, I don't know. The reference to red is also present in Marissa's Seiho title, and very interestingly, both Marissa and Reimu appear in this game looking much closer to their soon-to-be Windows designs. It's worth noting that the kanji for red can also be read as Scarlet, and this is what the wiki has it translated to, though whether or not this was influenced by EOSD's release, only the translators would know. I learned all of that just trying to find an answer for Marissa's red hair. Research can be a real fun rabbit hole, huh? Anyways, I find it interesting how when PC98 is included in fanworks, people use the redhead Marissa as the rep. It makes sense to do so, as it helps better differentiate the two eras. But it's neat how there's effectively two Marissas to choose from PC98 alone. Keeping on with Marissa, well, she's been in every game, and she's had a lot of slight variations on her outfit, but the witch aesthetic has stuck. So here's some outliers from official artwork that I thought were interesting. Earliest instance is Perfect Cherry Blossom, where Marissa is missing her signature braid, though this is early enough that it could just be experimentation. Funnily enough, this braid isn't present in PC98 games, but it is present only once on the Story of Eastern Wonderland cover. Yet in-game Marissa clearly has shorter hair. This cover is actually the closest to Windows Marissa's hairstyle outside of Seiho that PC98 ever got. Whoops, sidetracked again. Small pit stop to the written works. Specifically, Curiosities of Lotus Asia and Marissa's own grimoire. Her outfit is still witch in nature, but her top is pretty different, notably the boob window. She also has some nifty black gloves and boots. Maybe you wouldn't consider this much of a change, but looking at Marissa's wardrobe as a whole, it really stuck out. It's also a favorite of Aqua style, seeing as Genso Wanderer Marissa wears it too. I'm not planning to look at every single accessory, but Marissa's ribbons are pretty interesting. The ribbons on her hat and braid are often white, though the hair braid has been known to change. The hat ribbon tends to stay consistent. Sometimes though, these ribbons are purple. So why is this interesting? Look at this. The first instance is an Immaterial and Missing Power, a spin-off with a different artist, portraying the hat ribbon a rather deep purple, with the character sprite not fully reflecting that. 6 months later, in Phantasmagoria of Flower View, Marissa had both a purple ribbon in hat and braid. Up to this point, Marissa's back sprite had been updating per game, and you can see in the previous 3 games the white ribbon on the hat. Come POFV, the back sprite updated to show less of the ribbon, but made it clear it was purple. This was the last time Marissa's back sprite ever changed, even though her ribbon mainly went back to white. Weirdly, in Scarlet Weather Rhapsody, Marissa's character select art features the white ribbon, but then all the assets from the last game are used anyways. Marissa would don her purple ribbon again in 10 Desires, but after that purple was never seen again. Well, actually not, because while it's white in Urban Legend and Limbo and Antinomy of Common Flowers, the hat ribbon is purple in Forbidden Scrollery, and the artist responsible for all 3 of these is the same person. Well, that was such an overly unnecessary look at the color of a ribbon that I feel like a wacko, but at least her ribbon has never been purple since, except all the time in the player sprite. There was another time where Marissa had a different hat ribbon color, in UFO where it was kinda beige. She also had a weird apron with a big M on it. UFO's design is weird in general, but I'm talking about it mainly for Marissa's magic wand thingy here. This wand is a random feature that's not entirely unfitting, but it does make you wonder why she got it and where it went. The last thing I wanted to mention is the 100th Black Market cover, where Marissa's hair is a paler yellow, braidless, though given the relaxed pose, that feels like a given, and she has red eyes again. This cover caused a number of theories and speculation, but well, it ultimately amounted to nothing. Isn't it fascinating how a couple changes can cause such discussion over a character? Though admittedly these changes are a lot more notable than the case of the purple ribbon. That's everything I wanted to say about Marissa. And man, was it more than I expected. Like I already mentioned, I'm not going over every little thing, like her seasonal clothing, minor accessories, or footwear. It's gotta be interesting to me. otherwise I can't make it interesting for you. Now we're gonna look at Reimu, and we'll start with the intro's example. Her ever-shifting black-brown hair. Okay, so this shifts to and from all the time. More so than I want to demonstrate, believe me. But I will say this. The first instance of Reimu with brown hair is sitting on the EOSD menu. Then both her character art and back sprite have black. This never changed for Reimu's back sprite as well. And if you want to argue lighting on sitting Reimu, then the first brown-haired Reimu appears in Imperishable Night. Official game Reimu has been more black hair orientated, but brown hair is far from uncommon. Now for Reimu's accessories. You know she pretty much always has a big bow in her hair, but did you know in one of her PCB endings she's got a cool hat? Yeah, the endings are kinda wacky with some colors and detail, but there are some very interesting bits within them. So I'll mention as many ones that I thought were neat as I can. A smaller detail is with Reimu's chest ribbon, originally being red, in both EOSD and PCB. Became its most well-known yellow color starting with Immaterial and Missing Power, or Imperishable Night, if you want to talk Zone Art specifically. Weirdly, there's a few instances where Reimu's ribbon is blue, starting with POFV, then returning in Subterranean Animism, Hopeless Masquerade, Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, and Urban Legend in Limbo / Antinomy of Common Flowers. What's particularly noteworthy about that last one is similar to Marissa, the covers for Forbidden Scrollery that Reimu appears on have her yellow ribbon. And that brings us to our next subject, her eyes. In the Forbidden Scrollery covers, she has yellow eyes. This might be the only time she's ever clearly had them. Reimu is mainly known for her brownish eyes, though she sometimes has red eyes, and in the earlier fighting games, blue eyes. Side note on that, like Marissa, Reimu's character select art in Scarlet Weather Rhapsody has a changed detail, her eyes, that is only reflected in this instance. Then Hopeless Masquerade changes even more. But, well, that game's art choices have raised many questions already throughout the years. So that's a lot of aspects that you might have never thought much of. I can tell you personally that when I think of Reimu, I never picture her with a blue ribbon. But there it is, clear as day, a number of times. Makes you wonder how many other character details I've mentally blinded on, because I already decided which color I like the best, and can't easily picture them another way. I'm not done though, just saving the ones I thought were the neatest last. Reimu's Gohei, as I'm sure you already know, has progressively gotten larger each game that it's appeared in. It's gone from about half Reimu's height to taller than her. It's a funny detail that is often used in comedic images, but not one that is adhered to all the time, since it can kind of detract from certain genres of image. The last thing I want to talk about with Reimu is one that I've always assumed Reimu had, but found out she basically never did. So, Reimu is affectionately referred to as the Armpit Shrine Maiden. Her outfit exposes her sides, and you can see her white undershirt. Now here's the interesting part. In pretty much every piece of official Reimu art, it's always an undershirt. But in my mind, Reimu wears Sarashi. After looking, the only pieces of official media I could find that clearly showed Sarashi were from Sengetsusei and the newer art and cheating detective Satori. I have to wonder, what caused me to start thinking Reimu dressed like this? I mean, I'm not gonna change that thought, but this is the clearest case I've ever seen of fandom completely warping an aspect of a character for me. Well, unsurprisingly, the protagonist had a great amount to talk about. But now we're gonna start going down the games. There's a lot of characters, so get ready. Quick stop at Rumia just to talk about her weird ribbon, and not the period of time where some people called her Lumia. I don't know what these balls are, no one seems to know, though sometimes she's drawn with a tie instead. Then there's her hair ribbon. While it is actually an ofuda tied to her hair, people tend to just draw a ribbon here. I can't say I blame them. Chirno's design has stayed pretty consistent throughout the years. A smaller detail is the ribbon on her head, sometimes blue and sometimes green. The real interesting point is her wings. If I asked you right now what you imagine when I say Chirno's wings, what comes to mind? For me, it's the one that Great Fairy Wars and Hidden Star and Four Seasons use. But wait, those are quite a few years after EOSD. Yeah, EOSD, POFV, and Histotensoku have what look like big ice chunks. And then Double Dealing Character gives her 4 wings, completely different from all the others. If I had to guess how the Great Fairy Wars style was so prominent before Great Fairy Wars itself, I'd credit it to her boss sprite in POFV. Fairy wings are a detail I tend to overlook myself, so it's cool to see such a collective consensus on what wings look best for our favorite ice fairy. Mei Ling's name was a pretty notable inconsistency for a time, though it's since been confirmed to be Hong Mei Ling. I talked about it a bit in my memes video, if you want to know. The other thing is Mei Ling doesn't wear pants, but she kicks a lot. Twilight Frontier noticed this and gave her pants in her fighting game appearances, but nowhere else in canon can you find her wearing these. For obvious reasons, most Touhou fans don't mind Mei Ling throwing kicks in her usual attire, but this particular pair of poofy pants had some remarkable staying power, and you can find them used for the same reasons Twilight Frontier did all those years ago. Oh man, Patchouli is a fun one, and you probably already know this. Patchy's main outfit is very well known for having purple stripes, which you can see from her first appearance. Except according to Zun, these aren't stripes. Not counting every liar who crawled out of the woodwork when this info spread claiming they knew that, or obviously those aren't stripes, everyone latched onto this idea. In the Immaterial and Missing Power OST booklet, a comment states that Zun's design draft for Patchy didn't have stripes, yet they ended up on her anyways. Another comment also remarks how everybody thinks Patchouli has stripes, except Zun-san. There are a few instances where stripeless Patchy appeared in official work. Her boss sprite, for one, as well as her Hopeless Masquerade cameo. Also her entry art in Perfect Memento and Strict Sense, and character select in Scarlet Weather Rhapsody. And I guess Cheating Detective Satori, but that outfit is a bit different. There's definitely fan art of stripeless Patchy, but I think my brain has developed some kind of filter that applies the stripes to the outfit, so I never think too much about it. Before I move on, I'd like to give a special shout out to Patchouli's left foot. For whatever reason, the ribbon on this slipper shoe is yellow, where all the other visible from the front ribbons are red and blue. This is such a stupid detail that I've started paying extra attention just to make sure it's there. There's nothing strange about appreciating character accuracy. Now for the maid who popularized colored contacts in Gensokyo. Well, the funny thing about that statement is that Reimu and Marissa's eye color changed in PCB as well. I guess Sakuya's were just more notable. Well, actually, I doubt it's that as well. In fact, the colored contacts comment is a bit unjust here. Let me explain. So in the fighting games, Sakuya's character art has gray eyes, though her models are blue. Not the point here, but a good time to mention it. When Sakuya activates certain spell cards, her eyes change to red. As a result, Sakuya's red eyes are attributed to combat arts and techniques, which is infinitely cooler than just an updated iris. Speaking of technique, Sakuya's signature one certainly is a mouthful to explain. I'm gonna keep it real simple. She can manipulate time. She can also manipulate space, but I honestly don't know if she's ever done this outside of her debut game, nor do I know any real example of it being used in fanworks. There was a time where Sakuya claimed her time stop is actually just her moving at incredible speeds with no mass. Given the context of her saying this though, it's unclear if it's true. Regardless, I don't think anyone has ever used this explanation for her ability as their own, probably because it's not nearly as cool as just stopping time, or more likely because then it wouldn't match up to how Dio does it. That's pretty much it for Sakuya, but honorable mentions go to Alfie Sakuya causing a whole joke about her chest size. Also in that meme video, that's why I'm glossing over it here. Oh, and Sakuya's return to the games featuring her in stockings, because I really like them. Well, actually, take a look at this. Like the other pro tags, Sakuya's back sprite had a slight update each game up to POFE, going from purplish to proper blue. However, when she returned in double dealing character, Zun actually did update her POFE sprite to reflect the stockings, which wouldn't seem like much if it wasn't for the fact that Marissa has received 0 changes to her sprite since POFE, forever locking her into that purple ribbon she rarely wears. We are almost done with EOSD. All that's left is the Scarlet Sisters, starting with Remy. Well, there's actually not very much to discuss here, but there's still something. In her debut, Remy's hair is quite the light blue, and it's similar in Imperishable Night. In the fighting games, it's still blue enough, but it's deeper in color. The result is sometimes Remilia is drawn with bright blue hair, and hair that leans more into purple. Remilia also has a notable outfit swap she wears in Curiosities of Lotus Asia. The outfit is significantly more frilled out, but the most notable difference is her giant hat. Sengetsu says Remilia also wears this outfit, with a couple small additions. A little fun fact, Sengetsu started the idea that the Scarlet Sisters sleep in coffins on top of their queen beds. Not an inconsistency, but a cute detail I love mentioning. Finally, in EOSD, Remilia seems to wear some type of little gold brooch. It's kinda hard to make out. In the ending, it's pretty clearly replaced with a red one, and while no type of accessory is present here in future games, it is in other works, official or otherwise. Now for Flandre. Well, maybe not really. Flandre's lack of appearance for nearly 20 years means little to look at. In terms of inconsistency, the fans created their own versions of Flandre, personality-wise. Now there are some characters who kinda changed in attitude as they made more appearances that stand out. But I don't actually want to look into these as part of the video, and instead focus on the more physical aspects. I'm sorry if that's not to your liking, but you gotta understand. Properly looking into something like a character's personality will require reviewing just about every interaction said characters ever had, and using my own opinion to decide whether or not their words and actions align with what I believe they should based on what I think of a character. Only to be argued about it by someone who thinks claiming they're married to said fictional character makes them a leading authority on how they act. I can at least mention that the crystals on Flandere's wings have an order to their colors that I myself have never paid attention to. There's a slight difference in EOSD to Goyoku Ibun, but it's close enough. I'm all for attention to detail, but I wouldn't blame somebody for not putting all the crystals on or getting the colors exactly right. I have one more thing here to mention, not the inhabitants of the SDM, but the SDM itself. First of all, the world of Touhou doesn't really have anything like an official map. Areas of importance have been placed by fans using context and references throughout the series. Now the point. In the prologue story of EOSD, the final lines indicate that the mist is coming from a mansion on an island in the middle of the lake. I don't need to spell out what this implies, but in pretty much every piece of Touhou media after EOSD, official or otherwise, the mansion is located near the misty lake, but not on an island. Alright, on to PCB. Will it be as much as EOSD? Well, let's see. Letty? Well, her cameo in Hopeless Masquerade changed her bloomers out for a pair of proper white pants. And they look so nice that I wish this was the design that resonated with Letty artists when they draw her with clothes on. Little Chen? Well, she got a new outfit in CDS and grew her hair out. Chen is a part of Ron's boss attack for Unfinished Dream of All Living Ghost, back in her oh-so-familiar outfit and haircut here. Guess that means her CDS look is a little more fan than official, huh? Yeah, we're grasping at straws here, so if I skip characters going forward, assume it's because I got nothing fun to share. As Alice is already the perfect woman, there's really not much anyone would want to change. But there are a few things, one of which I only just noticed while writing this. Firstly, Alice is mainly known for having blue eyes, but in the fighting game art, they're yellow, though Alice's sprite shows blue. Her sprite also wears boots, something that became very popular for the character design, sometimes even accompanied with black stockings. Like I said, perfect woman. Now here's what I pretty much just noticed. Alice always carries a black book with her, wrapped and locked in a red bind. Back in Mystic Square, Alice was the extra boss, using the Grimoire of Alice for her attacks. There's a belief that these books are one of the same, with evidence being in her Imperishable Night art. You can see a similar border pattern in writing where Grimoire would be, though it's intelligible. In PCB, the book Alice is carrying is actually unlocked, and it also bears a resemblance to the back of the Grimoire, with admittedly a minor difference. Zun has been known to tease about PC98 turn Windows characters being one of the same, and this is likely just that, as the smaller details on the book are either absent or replaced in other works, including the fighting games. Now, everyone's favorite spring fairy. The obvious point here is regarding Lily Black. Well, to make a long story short, it's Lily White in a costume swap. But by the time this was confirmed, Lily Black had already taken on a life of her own, being her own character separate from Lily White, which, funnily enough, checks out as possible within Touhou's own universe, based on how the urban legends work. This next bit leads me to a fascinating place, Zun's emails, a collection of questions Zun answered years ago. For Lily here, someone asked if she was capable of speech due to her actions as a mid-boss, to which Zun basically replied that it wasn't due to her being unable to speak, but more so an expression of excitement in body language, which I guess in Touhou equates to indiscriminately firing Danmaku. These emails are fascinating on their own, including a pretty loose idea on character height, a slightly different opinion on the canonicity of PC98, and some backstory on our next characters, the Prism River Sisters. Let's go from oldest to youngest, which is to say Merlin to Lyrica, as Lunasa's colors are really easy to understand, so no one's ever messed them up. So what does that mean? Well, like her sisters, Merlin wears a white undershirt, though Merlin's outfit is pink. Her hair also has a lot of shine in it, but it's blue. So what is my point? Well, a lot of the time for Merlin, her entire outfit is colored the same pink. And this is definitely not a trick of the eye caused by the magic of colors. Merlin's cameos in Hopeless Masquerade and Antinomy of Common Flowers are pretty clear. Her hair is also a lot clearer as well. Funnily enough, one of Yukari's alts is a reference to the Prism Rivers, dressing Ron up as Merlin. Though here, the pink is a lot lighter. It reminds me of Remilia, except Yukari also has an alt that references the SDM, where Chen is dressed as Remy, with a much more defined pink. Small neat detail I noticed looking at it is that Ron is colored like Sakuya and is given red eyes. A neat touch more notable in my opinion due to another alt for Yukari resembling Yuyiko, in which both Ron and Chen are colored like Youmu, but were given blue eyes. Merlin got hijacked a bit there, but the point was pink is a color people seem to have a hard time agreeing on. Now, for little Lyrica. Well, apparently there was a period where it was assumed she was wearing shorts, due to the length of her skirt, and I assume the shading on the crotch. A short-haired, short-skirted character being mistaken for wearing shorts. I'm sure that'll never happen again. Anyways, it was pretty quickly confirmed in POFE that she wore a skirt. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. Lyrica's hair, like her sister, has a lot of shine to it. It makes her hair look more white than brown. but her hair is described as light brown. I personally don't understand how you can look at this and see brown, but my opinion here is irrelevant. Lyrica has appeared in a lot of works with clearly definable brown hair, lacking much of that PCB shine. Even her Hopeless Masquerade cameo is like this. Her cameo and Antinomy of Common Flowers matches her hair much closer to the original, as well as her Who's Who introduction art. It's less common than just standard brown hair, but the, light brown that Lyrica debuted with has made more and more appearances as time went on. And I personally rather like it, as the more basic brown on her hairstyle kinda makes her look super generic. Sorry, Yatsuhashi. Now for the real notable characters of PCB, starting with Youmu, perpetrator number 2 of the red-colored contacts. Well, actually, this might be another case like Sakuya. Youmu debuted with red eyes, and in the next game, they were blue. However, there are 2 cases in the game where Yomu's eyes are red. The first is in the Ghost Team Good Ending, where apparently her red eyes are caused by the effect of looking at the true full moon. The second is her last word, which is just her normal art mirrored with her eyes recolored. The last word bit could be argued as her eyes changing similarly in reason to Sakuya, but then there's the caused by the moon bit, which then begs the question, what's the reason she debuted with red eyes? Yomu's eyes remained bluish for quite a time, though there was this one-off appearance on a cola cover with yellow eyes. When she returned in 10 Desires, her eyes had changed to silver, matching her hair, to which they remain as today. Speaking of hair, silver and sometimes white. Even though they're close enough that this barely matters, I still wanted to mention it. In terms of accessories, sometimes a ribbon, sometimes a bow tie, the real bit is with her swords and sheaths. The details on the handles are often changed around or straight up removed, but the flower attached to the end of the Rokanken sheath is a constant. To end on some trivial details, when Yomu's outfit is detailed with the little ghosts, there's one present on her left breast, always opposite to her hairband ribbon, except in CDS, where they're on the same side. Does that matter? Not even remotely, but I noticed it, so now you get to as well. Yuyuko time! As usual, pink hair sure has its variants, but not the interesting bit here. With the exception of the fighting games, each time Yuyuko has made an appearance in an official game, the design on her kimono changes, starting with cherry blossoms, then the moon and clouds, then butterflies and flowers, and finally, to ghosts. From what I could see, the PCB pattern is the most commonly used, though there are times when no pattern is used at all. Almost all official works feature one of these, though Silent Sinner and Blue's Yuyuko does have the Imperishable Night design. Aside from the kimono pattern, Yuyuko virtually never changes, though there's some neat trivia about her headwear. In both PCB and Imperishable Night endings, we can see Yuyuko with her hat off, but her little paper Dreamcast triangle is still on, meaning it's not attached to her hat. You can actually see this in Silent Sinner and Blue as well. In the PCB ending, Yuyuko is in her jammies, and, well, the triangle's gone. So I guess that's actually been removable this entire time. I couldn't tell you what exactly the significance is of this paper triangle, but it's extremely common to include with Japanese ghosts. So common that there's actually a lot of art where the hat stays on during activities that you would often want to remove it for. Yeah, let's leave it at that. Ron is virtually the same since PCB, though there was an ending in Imperishable Night where she's seen without her hat. So why does this matter? Because Ron is the Shikigami, not the fox. And some believe the amulets on her hat to be said Shikigami. That Ron and the fox were separate entities became a very common, actually, that anyone who wanted to talk about Ron would have to hear at least once from people who do not understand social cues. So thankfully, the Yakumo's article in Strange Creators state that there is no problem thinking of Ron as the nine-tailed fox. Finally, we're at Yukari. And as usual, let's start with the obvious. Yukari debuted in a purple dress, and in the next game, she was wearing her sage outfit. This outfit became the staple in the fighting games, and fans have taken to referring to this outfit as her main wear, where her debut dress is more of a nightgown, likely born from the fact that the player meets Yukari in PCB pretty fresh off of her waking up. So here's where things get kinda weird. The sage's outfit is present both in Portrait and Player Sprite in Imperishable Night, though Yukari appears in her nightgown in one of the endings. Even stranger, she's wearing this gown again in her last word, but it's an alt color. Yet the background is the same one from PCB. And this particular Yukari sprite is used in all of her photo game appearances. The first two even use the same spell card background. I guess Imperishable Night was kinda weird like that for portraits. After all, Yukari had to remove her arm for hers. Where did it go? Marissa's borrowing it, don't worry. Within the written works, Yukari is actually more often wearing the debut dress, though some of them tend to customize the outfit to make it feel more like a proper dress, and not her jammies. The majority of Yukari's differences are primarily in her two outfits. It's hard to call this one simple as a result, though she did have some colored contacts, debuting with purple eyes, and sometimes having yellow eyes. And Silent Sinner and Blue randomly making them blue. Anyways, what's neat is that usually, the yellow eyes are present with the sage outfit, and the purple with the nightgown. Sometimes makes her feel like a completely different person, huh? Well, that does it for PCB, and I'm sure Imperishable Night will be a lot less due to less debuting characters. Wriggle's most well-known difference was the question of whether or not she was carrying a personal stick bug. Well, actually, that mystery was solved very quickly, but Wriggle's androgynous design had landed her in a number of gigs, so to speak. Anyways, that's dirty, so let's talk about her cool cape. It's designed like insect wings, but sometimes the cape is done very standard. It's definitely a cape, though Akyu claims Wriggle does have wings, and I can't say I've seen much art going this route. But it exists, though it's still debatable whether or not this is true, or just another one of those Akyu misinformation moments. Tei is a neat one, or should I say, a feet one.
That's disgusting!
She debuted in Imperishable Night with a portrait for her last words showing her hair foot, and though it's hard to tell, her portrait in POFE gave her those funny sock shoes, also her hair. Maybe it's just me, but her debut hairstyle feels way straighter, or at least not nearly as wavy as POFE. Imperishable Night's art is also lacking her signature carrot necklace. Tei's POFE design is definitely the most used, but at the same time, Tei is almost always portrayed harefoot. I'd argue the main reason for this is simply because it was hard to tell she was wearing anything on her feet in POFE, so the idea of no footwear carried over from her previous appearance. Reisen is the next installation in the Red-Eyed Stage 5 boss, though hers are permanent, because if they weren't, some of her titles would have some explaining to do. Reisen's outfit has undergone some changes, namely she has a number of different skirts. The main piece is her blazer, which she only ever wore in her debut, or not exactly. Starting from POFE and to this day, Reisen has ditched the jacket. Her portrait shows this, but not her sprite. It's the same as her Imperishable Night sprite, but the blazer is recolored in an unsuccessful attempt to match the shirt. Not the skirt though, mind you. Hilariously, Reisen's B-color sprite just straight up uses the Imperishable Night one. No edits at all. I'd make a snide comment about it, but I never actually noticed this myself. Now the bunny aspects. Did you know Reisen has a tail? I sure didn't. I actually went back to look at Tei to see if she had one. And yeah, it's very clear to see. Now Reisen's ears. Those have varied between looking real and fake, with more leaning towards the latter. There's no confirmation on their authenticity, though you're not going to see much of any Reisen art where they aren't present regardless. I'll wrap this up with a small ending detail, where Reisen's hair is blue. Not much else to say other than ending color shenanigans, though I did want to mention that this is probably the last time I'm going to mention endings, due to more of them going forward foregoing color, and quite frankly, being more obnoxious to look through for the off chance of a silly little error. Lastly is Moko. Just a small thing regarding her shirt. Moko wears long sleeves, and with her return in Urban Legend and Limbo, the sleeves have been burned away. It's clear from her design that this isn't just a case of short sleeves, though her cameo in Hopeless Masquerade does depict proper short sleeves. Aside from CDS, and of course the later fighting games, Moko is always shown with an unburned shirt. It's relatively clear that her current shirt is quite literally the hotness with the fans. It's not like Moko was exempt from outfit swaps prior, but she has gained a very unique method of something as simple as owning more than one shirt. And, well, that's it for Imperishable Night. Despite being part of the big three of Windows games, there weren't as many new and recurring, or at least changing, characters within. There's still more to look at though, so hang in there. Starting POFE is the big bird, Aya. Aya is often depicted with different equipment, things like her fan, pen, notebook, or camera, and her outfit, while gaining some additional flair every now and again, has mainly stayed the same. So now the differences. Early Aya was often depicted with a crow familiar, though it never seemed to be utilized outside of just portrait art. In Aya's actual debut, her book Bohemian Archive in Japanese Red, she's seen with black wings, something that would never appear in games, but sometimes in written works. The belief here became that Aya can just hide them whenever she wants. Speaking of hiding, Aya's ears are covered up by her hair up to her appearance in Scarlet Weather Rhapsody. Not too long after Double Spoiler, Aya was shown to have pointy ears, a design I want to say stuck ever since, but I find it kinda hard to tell. Speaking of, a number of characters seem to have pointed ears, and even weirder, some that are clearly pointed end up being normal later. I think most people stick to the pointed ears regardless, simply because they're more interesting to the design. To conclude the report, Aya's Aya color has always remained red, and I wanted to shed some light on what I've come to know as the Tengu outfit. I've always thought it was just something that got really popular from fanworks. But I found the original appearance is actually from Colla's chapter 25 cover, depicting Tengu very clearly in said outfit. This chapter was released just shy of a month before Mountain of Faith's release, whereas later depictions, such as Alternative Facts in Eastern Utopia, of Aya in this outfit came out much too late to be the source of it. This also explains why this outfit has extended to both Hatate and Momiji too. Though it seems as far as official works go, only Genji Asai has ever drawn this outfit. Honestly, their take on multiple characters' outfits are fascinating alone. Sakuya I left out, but she's pretty unique here. Also, Sumireko, with a real proper uniform. And yes, me mentioning this here means that I have nothing for her later. Next is Medicine. Surprised? This is just a tidbit that some artists do regarding her. Since she's a doll, she is sometimes depicted with doll joints. This is also extended to Hina sometimes as well, and it's hard to say who sees this more when comparing the popularity and porcelainity. Lastly, Eiki. I've talked about this 2 different times already, so let's make this quick. Eiki not short, popular belief is short. Komachi main blame, Eiki eternally small now. Before entering the new era, let me make a mention of Touhou's first written work protagonist, Rinosuke. Well, this partially falls into the personality bit, but I wanted to say that despite his canon appearance painting him as a calm intellectual, at some point, someone decided he was absolutely jacked and a bit of a horn dog. I really wish I had the origin of this interpretation, because it feels like the most prevalent take on the character in current times. Now Mountain of Faith with NITORI. The only real change she ever sees in canon is with the size of her bag, and I guess her size in general in Forbidden Scrollery. Due to her proficiency with machinery, she's sometimes drawn in things like a mechanic's jumpsuit, sometimes zipped, and oftentimes with the top hanging. What makes this interesting to me is that there's never been anything like this worn in official media, and it isn't a case of one superfan drawing it exclusively, making NITORI another character similar to Mystia, with a well-known alternate outfit that's not clear-cut canon. Despite Momiji being a very limited appearance character, she has quite a following. I chalk it up to her being a wolf girl with a sword, though in some of these rare appearances she's made in canon, her wolf ears are strangely absent. There are 3 sources listed here for this. Technically 4. Let's look at them. Firstly, Momiji's article in Symposium of Post-Mysticism. It's definitely Miji here, and I don't see anything, though the angle is arguable. She's also in an image in the afterword with characters who didn't get their own chronicle entry. Here it's arguable her ears are drooped at least. Then we have Wild and Horned Hermit. Though I don't have every appearance to show, I found ones that I think is hard to argue against being Moji, with hair tufts that can trick you into seeing ears, and a back view evidently lacking the ears. Finally, we have Alternative Facts in Eastern Utopia, where Mimo is supposedly featured in an article image regarding the ropeway. However, nothing in this article refers to her by name, and the image lacks any real identifier. I realized while writing this whole spiel that this particular image was obviously drawn by Aya Azuma, aka the Wild and Horned Hermit artist, so now it all kinda makes sense. I can't say I've ever seen fan work of Momiji without her ears, and I wonder if there was a reason for Aya Azuma to do this outside of simply disliking having to draw wolf ears. Well, regardless, this isn't exactly the first time old Momiji has been messed with by someone with the name Aya. Snai has a few to discuss. Let's begin. Firstly, her debut. Long hair, short gohei, yellow eyes, and a hairband with a frog accessory attached. Come UFO, Snai's eyes would become green, and her frog accessory less clear that it's a hairband. And this would become the norm going forward. Weirdly, in Hisotensoku though, Snai's portrait shows her with blue eyes, and the frog was clearly no longer attached to any hairband. However, her in-game sprite, which is already certainly something, has her with her original yellow eyes and hairband, though the snake ornament is noticeably absent. Come 10 Desires, Snai would start wearing a shorter skirt, and with Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, she would get a haircut, defining her hair as more medium length than long. And finally, as you probably already noticed, her gohei increased in size like Reimu's. Many interpretations of Snai are rooted to her UFO design, with the exception of the skirt length. In the written works, her hair is very clearly long, and this is true to fanworks in general. I'd argue long hair is one of her most identifiable traits. Yet, Zun has drawn it comparatively shorter since 2015. Kinda wonder why he's not only changed it, but stuck with it, even when all the Snai work continue to portray her with the longer hair. Kaneko isn't really anything major, just noting the Shiminawa on her back. It's there very often, but it's not a permanent fixture. I mean, obviously not. Could you imagine? I consider it something like a status symbol for her, only ever taking it off when relaxing, out of the public eye, or when the artist just doesn't want to draw it. Now there's a whole conversation regarding Suwako's hat, though its design has remained the same. I'm here mainly for her eyes, and socks. She debuted with gray eyes, and this remained the same in Hisotensoku. However, her sprite did end up with blue eyes. Strangely enough, there's a lot of fan work that portrays her with yellow eyes. Normally you could expect the popular color to be pulled from canon, but in Suako's case, well, there isn't one. Makes you wonder how this color came to be so accepted. The other point, her socks, is a more reasonable happening. In her debut, she wears over-the-knee socks. As the name implies, they stop over the knee. Well, just about every appearance after Mountain of Faith turned these into thigh-highs. There are some possibilities for this, like Zun's characters having noodle limbs, so gauging their true distance was too hard. Or more likely, people saw socks that didn't stop above the ankle and let their minds be poisoned by the idea of absolute territory. Moving on with a small pit stop at Scarlet Weather Rhapsody. The characters introduced in these games don't often get more appearances, but Tenchi here made a triumphant return. All it cost her was a few inches, but nothing she couldn't compensate for with a keystone. In case that wasn't clear, Tenchi's design remained the same, but the art style differences made Tenchi look short. A remark by Mamizo pretty much solidified this as intended. Character height is something that almost no character has a defined number to, but there's plenty of accepted general ideas for characters. The situation makes me wonder how tall Tenchi was thought to be prior to Antinomy of Common Flowers. Alright, back to main with Subterranean Animism, with Yamame. Given her species, fans would sometimes depict her with a more spider-like design, namely in extra legs. When Yam's returned in Goyoko Ibun, the idea of her having spider legs was partially canonized. What I mean by that is that it's actually a bit hard to say for sure if these are legitimate, or extensions of the ribbons that usually wrap around her dress. Well, either way, it's an awesome addition to her overall design. Parsi is a tiny detail that I'm not sure if it's intended based on her clothes design. The black undershirt she wears is pretty heavily covered, but whenever the overshirt is opened or off, the undershirt is shown to cut off at the shoulders. I actually found some early takes on Parsi where this black undershirt was a full dress, but it didn't take long for the high neck to start circulating. This interpretation has since become so common that I'm willing to believe it was always intended by Zun, despite never showing Parsi's undershirt proper himself. Yugi debuted in an interesting outfit. It's often joked that it looks very much like a PE uniform. When Zun heard this in an interview, he mentioned that Yugi's skirt was semi-transparent. Due to the recent Nico Nico trouble, I can't offer verification on him saying this, but you can see this for yourself on her art. The strength of the transparency is varied, though in the case that it goes up the whole skirt, you'll likely find Yugi wearing bloomers, really completing the uniform. This outfit is very well known for Yugi, but it's become quite a relic of the past officially. Yugi's first major appearance since SA wasn't until Goyoko Ibun, where she came back in a blue yukata, and this has continued into CDS and Lotus Eaters. But this outfit actually originated way back in a promotional flyer for SA, with some slight differences of course. And again, in a similar outfit in her Hopeless Masquerade cameo. The yukata has been a very welcome addition to the character for many, though the old uniform is still pretty synonymous with the Begoni, even if she hasn't officially worn it since 2010. The easiest thing to say about Satori is her hair color. It's pretty unarguably purple, yet it ended up closer to pink in many fanworks. We'll disregard her stubby arms here, it's just one of those things an oopsied, like Minariko's 2 left feet, or Miko's 2 right hands. This last bit is regarding the third eye, namely, the chords. How many and how they move is pretty much up to how much detail the artist wants to give, sometimes even foregoing the chords at all and giving the eye freedom. The only real consistent thing I can find regarding these chords is that when they're present, they are only visibly attached to her clothing. It's understandable why people don't want to show them connecting directly into her skin, but it does raise a question about how the eye is connected to the Satori in the first place. Orin has a very interesting quirk to her that I think really sticks out. Characters with animal ears always have the sides of their head covered, hiding where the human ears would be. Well, Orin's human ears are very noticeable, giving her 2 sets of ears. It definitely felt weird the first time I saw her, but it's become one of those things I've kind of filtered out. It's actually quite common to see Orin with all ears accounted for, but there's still art that makes the effort to hide them. Guess it bothers some people more than others. I made an example with Oku at the start, and though her chest eye thingy is up in the air, what about her other accessories? Oku wears a big old cape, a control rod termed art cannon, and a concrete foot. The cape being removable is obvious, and there's a well-known instance in Sengetsusei and a background cameo of Oku without her wearing these. Well, from what we can actually see, this only applies to the cape and foot, but given how her visible arm is positioned, you can infer the rod isn't equipped. I'm sure most people are of the opinion that all of these were removable regardless, even if you don't count the same reasons the chest eye is often removed, because could you imagine if Oku had to go everywhere in Buster Only mode with 4 metric tons pulling her down? So Koishi's third eye is actually a lot more consistent than Satori's, probably because her eye only has 2 chords, and the chord forms a heart. though the same principle of attaching to clothes only applies. Believe me when I say these aspects of her design are heavily respected in fanworks. It's pretty surprising, though the eye color does hover between a darker blue to full-on purple, likely due to the fighting games. Speaking of those, Koishi's hair color is widely seen as unquestionably green, though in her debut, there was so much white shine in her hair that some people see more grayish or even silver. It's neat how both Komeijis are well known for hair colors that aren't exactly accurate to their debuts. Though what's funny is that when you invert the two, Satori's hair certainly looks a lot closer to what Koishi's is best known as, while Koishi's, not as much. Moving on to UFO, starting with Kogasi. This isn't actually an inconsistency of any kind, just something neat I noticed. Katakase Obake are one-eyed and one-legged umbrella yokai, and Kogasa's human form attempts to replicate that with her one red eye and pose. Looking at more Kogasa art, official or otherwise, many poses follow a similar idea, more often than not having one leg planted on the ground and the other pulled up. It's a neat detail that I never thought about past it just being basic dynamism, but I mean, just look at her bobbing and Goyoko Ibun. It's hard to call that anything but intentional. I'm not gonna lie, Ichiden has very little going for her, though I gotta say, I kinda forgot what she looked like in UFO, because the glow up for her drip in Hopeless Masquerade was straight bus and no cap. No, but for real, it's probably the closest to a full redesign I've ever seen. Even the hair, which the wiki calls light purple in UFO, though it is incontestably blue afterwards. Now obviously you can find art of Ichiden in her old outfit because of the release date difference, but I'm more than confident that after Hopeless Masquerade, Byakuren donated the old rags to those in need. Murasa is a short-haired lady who wears a sailor suit with a short skirt, but due to the way Zun drew it, people weren't sure if it was a skirt or baggy shorts. I think what really settled it for most was due to PC98's Chieri from Phantasmagoria of Dim Dream, since she's another lady in a sailor suit, but very clear shorts. It helped a lot that UFO had a number of nods to PC98 within it. Granted, those were mainly from Mystic Square. Murasa's later official appearances did make the answer clear, but it really feels like the artists responsible were trying to capture that same uncertainty in her wardrobe, her cameo in Hopeless Masquerade being the clearest to see. When Murasa returned in Goyoko Ibun, along with her sick admiral's coat and general glow-up, she very clearly had shorts on, and I appreciate that they kept the bagginess that was present on the original skirt. I'd love to talk about Sho, maybe in 2028 when she finally gets another real appearance. Anyways, Byakuren, did you know she had a cape in this game? She also has yellowish brown eyes. Disregarding the hat and beads come Hopeless Masquerade, the only seemingly permanent change was that her eyes became purple, though I will say the beads do make more appearances and are present in her in-game sprite right over her airbags. You know, because she drives a motorbike. Damn, you really can't see how big the airbag is until it deploys, huh? Normally that would be it, but apparently there was some confusion regarding Byakuren's hair back in her debut, with fans being unsure if her hair was a natural gradient or being cast from her air scroll above her head. This led to some early art depicting a fully brunette Byakuren. I don't have a link to the source of the confirmation that it's natural, but given how Byakuren has looked over the last decade or so, it's easy to assume it's the truth. Finishing up is Nue, and this is more or less a personal thing regarding her. Nue's nature as, well, a Nue, gives her the ability to conceal her true form to an extent, which sometimes can mean something similar to a Tanuki transformation. Touhou M1 had this idea for Nue, and a really cool detail they did was to change an aspect of the design to have something red on the right and blue on the left, to reference her wings. I've never seen this done outside of M1, though admittedly most settings where this would even matter are done in black and white, so the idea would simply be lost. Still, it's a really cool subtle identifier that I just want to spread the idea of. 10 Desires might be the beginning of the end, but I have another small pit stop, this time at Great Fairy Wars, and this one is an honest-to-God inconsistency. In one of the game's endings, Chirno bumps into Aya and wants to throw hands, but Aya ends up directing her to a different opponent instead. This ending directly leads to the extra stage. What's weird is that in Symposium of Post-Mysticism, the Kakashi Spirit News reports on the fight between Marissa and Chirno, aka the Great Fairy Wars extra stage. In the article, Hecatia was the one who bumped into Chirno and directed her towards Marissa. I actually think it's possible for both of these statements to be true, as Aya sent her away without an interest in writing it, and Chirno could have bumped into Hecatia afterwards with Hat having a similar idea as Aya, except with the desire to write about the outcome. Well, regardless of how it went down, it was a little bird that told Chirno to go pick that fight. Okay, now 10 Desires with Kyoko. Kind of. This extends to Mystia, who I'm mentioning for the second time without her own part. Anyways, these two have a band and a very dark picture of them performing in a band outfit. I think the image is clear enough to follow on a broader term, but smaller details are harder to pick out. If you look up the band by their name, you'll see most do follow as much as the Symposium of Post-Mysticism image can provide. And while adjustments have been made throughout the course of time, they do more often than not share the same usage of black leather, provided of course they're not jamming out in their individual debut outfits. Yoshika is a pale lady, likely because she is dead. She's similar to Kogasa in that she has a common trope in her poses, Yoshika's being her arms raised. Her omake even states that her body is stiff and her joints don't flex, and can't walk straight, meaning she really does move like a stereotypical zombie. Back to the pale bit, fans do sometimes depict her with healthier skin, though others will double down on it, making it much bluer. You know, like Hishenko. The last bit is regarding the talisman hanging on her forehead. I don't know what it says. In fact, it's barely even visible in Zun's art. Akyu claims these talisman are to-do lists from Sega, though no specifics are given. The fandom page on the wiki mentions it's sometimes written with a phrase from a famous Jiangxi movie, or it's something written to reflect the scenario. I can't read the language, so someone else will have to tell me how often this happens, at least fanworks-wise, as there's no fully visible talisman on any official Yoshikas, unless you count her Who's Who article. Aside from Sega's nasty interpretations, her physical designs remain mostly unchanged. There's a small detail on her leg, a talisman the wiki speculates is there for Yoshika-related reasons. This talisman is pretty unreadable, and kind of a forgettable detail given how far down the leg it is. Pretty much only full-body works can even show it. For the image that do show it, I wonder if its writing is reflective of a reference, or just whatever the image's scenario is. Futo is another one of those inconsequential details, or so I thought. It's her multiple ribbons, as well as her eye color. Let's get the latter part out of the way right now. Futo debuted with gray eyes, and fighting game appearances made them blue. Now the main detail I wanted to talk about. In her debut, both of her leg ribbons are the same color, and in the fighting games, the right foot ribbon is blue. Now according to Zun in the Who's Who article for Futo, the ribbons on her arms, legs, neck, and hat correspond to the 5 colors of Feng Shui. In 10 Desires, Futo's neck ribbon is basically black. But in the fighting games, this ribbon is changed to a little purple bow, and again, the right leg is blue. See, both black and blue are acceptable as far as what in Feng Shui it represents. So this is just guesswork from me. Perhaps the artist from the fighting games felt it was weird for Futo to have 6 ribbons and 5 colors, or that it would be better if it was clearly blue, and as a result, the neck accessory was altered, and one of the yellow ribbons took over the role. But who really knows? Wow, Miko's design has a lot of neat intricacies to it, so let's ignore all of that and talk about her feet. Alright, so in her debut, she has no cape, and is wearing these gold shoes. In the fighting games, Miko gets her trademark cape, and is wearing sandals. But they're the same design as the OG. That's when I realized. I cannot tell if Miko is wearing socks with sandals, or fancy shoes. Fan art seems to be kinda divided on this, but it's kinda hard to tell when the majority of art I find that shows Miko's feet aren't exactly concerned about her footwear. Okay, feet aside, eye color. Just like Futo, Miko debuted with gray eyes, and had them changed in Hopeless Masquerade. Only hers were changed to yellow. Now about her headphones. Earmuffs? Well, get this. In Miko's entry in Symposium of Post-Mysticism, Akyu claims she's wearing earmuffs, though an interview with Zun regarding 10 Desires claims Zun stated that Miko does indeed wear headphones. This interview predates Miko's Chronicle entry, though the reason why Zun even said this is probably because of how many people saw headphones without him saying anything. But, well, that doesn't mean Akyu's claim has to be wrong. Miko can just be rocking the best noise-canceling headphones 10,000 yen bills can buy. We are approaching double-dealing character, so expect things to dry up pretty significantly at this point. But hang in there, I still have a few left. Kagero is a wolf girl that, under the full moon, gets a bit hairy. You can see it on her arms in her debut game. I don't really think I need to say this, but people don't draw any excess body hair on Kagero regardless of how the full moon affects her, outside of a, particular area. Anyways, it seems that Kagero's ears aren't a part of this transformation, which surprises no one. But I bring it up because of this itty-bitty background appearance in Wild Horn Hermit, where Kagero has her ears exposed. Why does this matter? Well, this is the same artist who stole Momiji's ears, so I'm just exposing the injustice. Next is Shimmy. Obviously, I'm going to explain her size difference. It's the Miracle Mallet's power that makes her standard character height in her game appearances, but her actual size is a lot smaller. I mean, she's an inchling. The main point I wanted to bring up is with her bowl hat. Very obviously a bowl in DDC. In the fighting game, she rides a more detailed bowl, and her bowl hat is more akin to a saucer, or just the lid of the bowl she's riding. What's interesting is that while the portrait art bowl is quite detailed, the bowl in Shimmy's sprite is just like her original hat. After looking at different shimmies, I found the DDC bowl is most common, with the thinner top usually only present when the riding bowl is being used, though I found at least one notable instance of both designed bowls being used. Before moving on, I felt like mentioning that the bowl Shimi used for one of her nons has a faded butterfly pattern that I don't think anyone has ever ended up using. Shame, as it's a pretty nice bowl in its own right. Seiden and Ringo have a size dynamic that I'm not interested in the slightest. Since they're rabbits, it stands to reason they have tails, though you can't see anything in LOL K. Seiden's sprite in Touhou 19 confirmed one, though nothing for Ringo. Not that it really matters, since at this point, there's no doubt that she would have one, though like Raisin, it's a detail that is easily forgotten, or just not considered. I almost skipped over Doremi since I thought the only detail difference was the size of her hat. I noticed that in her debut, she wears a full dress that goes black, white, black. In Nativity of Common Flowers, Doremi's dress is 2/3 white, with the top half that is usually black being a capelet instead of part of the dress itself. The capelet is definitely the most well-known take on the outfit, and it's such a small change that you'd think it wouldn't have much of an impact. Just goes to show how important details can truly be, even if they feel a bit inconsequential. Junko is blonde, right? I'm serious about this question, because I apparently don't understand the colors yellow and orange. The wiki here says Junko's hair is orange. Sure, it's definitely darker than the yellow portions of her outfit, but orange? So I looked at other characters who had orange hair. Suika? Yeah, orange. God damn it. Okay, how about Sunny? Wiki calls it red. Sure, redhead often means orange, and it's clear. What about Jun? Light brown? Am I going insane? All I wanted was comparisons to Junko. Now I'm questioning if my understanding of the color orange was ever correct. Okay, Hecatia at least is blonde. Sometimes. Depending on which planet is on her head, her hair and eyes change from red to blue to yellow. Though her main form, if you want to call it that, is the red one. It's pretty clear it's a form change from her fight, but some people like to consider all three forms as individuals with different personalities, similarly to Flandre's 4-of-a-kind spell card. On that note, I've often wondered why Hecatia's skirt featured green instead of yellow on it, until I saw this artwork of the three and realized how good that green looks on the blonde one. Anyways, the last note here is that Hecatia is often barefoot, except in one chapter in Visionary Fairies and Shrine, where she is wearing boots. Why do I know this? Because the wiki mentions it. With a picture. Yeah, Minariko has no mention of her 2 left feet, yet Hecatia was in boots once and it had to be recorded. Her toes were unhoed, and someone had to let the world know. Jumping all the way to Okina, I wanted to talk about her chair. To make it short, Okina is in a big chair in stage 6, and standing in the extra stage. As Mara is a god of disabilities, Zun had intended for Okina to appear in a wheelchair, though he worried that it could be taken as insensitive if not handled correctly. Since then, Okina has made official appearances in a wheelchair, and fancy chairs in general. But the truth is, Okina herself can use her legs. Because according to Zun, Okina doesn't have a disability, but that she herself is the disability. She sure is, Zun. She sure is. Kutaka wears an orange dress. Oh god damn it. Yashie is an impressive mention here, since she's so new you wouldn't think anything would be changed. Well, in Wily Beast and Weakest Creature, she has red eyes. And with her return in Touhou 19, they're yellow. Also a smaller point, the thread on her right side was originally red, and changed to purple. Now you could also make an argument for the shades of her tail, or even the hair color, but that would be heavy nitpicking. And I'm mostly just impressed that there's this much to say, considering how many characters I've started skipping. Speaking of skipping, welcome to the final character I'm going to talk about today. You already know who it is, it's our lovable sheep, Yuma. From Goyoku Ibun to Touhou 19, Yuma's earrings went from yellow to red. The design on her horn ribbons changed, and the brooch and pins became dinnerware styled. Okay, now the elephant in the room. Yuma's sharp teeth were a massive aspect to her debut design, and you better believe people made sure to include them in fanworks. Then suddenly in her next appearance, Yuma was domesticated, soft face, and no teeth. How the hell did this happen? Well, according to Zun, Yuma was never intended to have the sharp teeth to begin with, and I guess chose to go ahead with his original idea for her instead of following her debut. If you ask me, it's a crime to do that. But I did come to enjoy the easy over Yuma jokes about the stark change in expression between both games. Well, that's all I got. And my god, that was way more than I expected when I started. I hope you enjoyed all these damn near irrelevant differences. And maybe you learned something that you'll now think about more than you should regarding certain characters. As for me, I'm always happy to learn more about the series I love. And since I want to draw most of these characters at some point, learning about details that I like to incorporate in my art down the line is an added plus. And before you even ask, why didn't you talk about chest size? Well, because literally every character in the series has been drawn with balloon tits at this point, so there's no point in me bringing it up on an individual level, you goddamn gooner. Anyways, what was your favorite bit? Was there something I didn't mention you thought warranted a segment? feel free to let me know in the comments as usual. And with that, I'll leave you with this. All Reimu is good Reimu, regardless of her hair, eye, or ribbon color. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.